Welcome to WEGeniusMinds podcast, coming to you from the future in the midst of these crucial times of change. I am Paulina Amador, your host, director, and producer of the groundbreaking documentary, Evolution, the Genius Equation. I invite you to watch my film at our website, WEGeniusMinds.com. This series expands on the brilliant interviews I conducted with some of the most revolutionary scientists and best-selling authors of our time. Today's podcast is with the legendary J.C. Knight, inventor of the patented Blu Room technology, author of the book A State of Mind, My Story, and the unique channel of Ramtha. In this first episode of our evolutionary conversation, we learn about JC's profound spiritual life and her experiences of alchemy, superconsciousness, and beyond. JC, you are the channel of the legendary master teacher Ramtha. Can you please give our audience an introduction to who Ramtha is?
Oh, that's a big question. Ramtha the Enlightened One, I didn't know who Ramtha the Enlightened One was in 1977. I didn't even know who Edgar Cayce was in 1977. People always ask God for help. They always pray that God will look over them or their children or their loved ones. I did that all the time. I was very unconventional, divorced woman with 2 children, having to make it in the world as a woman at that time. And just enough for us to survive and have a tiny bit to go to a movie and have a hamburger or a hot dog. And all the time into the unknown from New Mexico, driving, I would chase my fright away by asking God to protect me and my children and to make certain that where I was going, that's where I was supposed to go, because I didn't know. So we all do that. From time to time. I did it excessively because I had no one else to talk to. Everybody else was back in New Mexico and in Texas. So when I say that as a precursor to answering the question, we never expect God to answer us back. We never expect to hear a voice. We're so used to talking to nothing, something, invisible, heaven, because we've never been talked back to or answered, literally in languages. So I often wonder what would happen if God just started talking to the congregation in the churches. They'd probably be overflowing, or they'd run out screaming and say it's a demon that's taken over the church, because God's not supposed to answer you. But this one day, Ramtha appeared before my husband-to-be and I, and said that he was here to help us over the ditch. I didn't know everything about Ramtha the first day. I just thought that maybe that the angel of the Lord was appearing to me and that maybe I had done something wrong. I was frightened. I didn't realize my husband couldn't hear me, because the magnet on the table that we used to align the pyramids was going off. And here's this glorious being. I mean, what do you do when God answers you or a being answers? Is it being an angel? Is it a demon? How small of a mind do we have? Because we haven't ventured into the unknown reality against our own superstition. So meeting Ramtha took a long time for me to understand. I was missing the sale at Nordstrom's and time with all the rest of those screaming women, right? Well, why do I have to sit here and listen to something nobody believes in? I didn't see any wings. I didn't see any halo, per se. My book, A State of Mind, I go into this rare chapters of when simplicity and normalcy meets extraordinary. And that was Ramtha's meeting with me. The first thing he did was address my belief in the devil. And so I sort of wanted to know, how do you know this? I mean, why am I hearing you? How I know that you're not a deceiver? And then Ramtha started telling me about himself. If you're not familiar with the Indian subcontinent, chances are you probably don't know who Rama is. Chances are you probably wouldn't know about these ancient battles they recorded. Chances are you're still thinking about that sale at Nordstrom's. So he started telling me little by little. And then one day, he took me out of my body because I didn't have the mind. I didn't have the knowledge to rise to his meanings. But I didn't have any experience. I didn't grow up in India. I didn't grow up in Nepal. I don't have any resources to be able to understand what he's talking about. And neither do 7 billion of us either. So the whole idea of experiencing it and then developing your own mindful dictionary. I had to learn as a young mother, married to a dentist, going to Safeway and Nordstrom's. I had to learn a whole new level of knowledge to understand that God wouldn't be allowing this to happen if it wasn't supposed to happen. So I learned that Ramtha lived 35,000 years ago. 35,000 years ago, really? Or we're talking caves and stinky cavemen and smelly skins and bones through your nose. That's the idea, a lack of education on anthropology shows you that's what we think. But wasn't that at all. And I had never been to the Great Pyramids. I had never been to Machu Picchu. I had never been to these ancient sites that predate the pyramid. As I got to see more and then ask Ramtha questions, I was developing a vocabulary, a visual knowledge, my own experience. And they did say, well, what does that word mean to you? He did that all the time. Every sentence, it was as it did, indeed it was, so be it. And every word had to be empowered, and I didn't understand why. So he'd say, what does it mean to you? And I'd have to think, what does this word mean to me? And so I realized I was saying words I had no pictures for. I had no experience with. I had no meaning with. As I developed meaning in my vocabulary, wordsmithing, then Ram would say, what does that mean to you? And then what does that mean to you? What he was doing is he was allowing me to pull consciousness from an unknown source. And that by having the question about the word, allowed information that the word represents to flow into my brain in a stream of consciousness. Suddenly, I started knowing things, bigger things than buy one pair of shoes and get the second pair for a dime. And I started knowing things because Ramtha kept asking me what my words meant as I was endeavoring to describe them and reaching for it. I didn't know that at the time, but I was really learning to open up to the unknown, a level of consciousness that my brain had the capacity to process, but my small-mindedness didn't even know it was present. We didn't even know it was there. So as I got to know more, Paulina, and see more, and then I noted that of those things that I was learning, as I learned them, the reality of them would somehow arise in my life. Like going to the Yucatan, out of the blue. My husband receives an invitation to go to Mexico on a dental convention, and then we could go to all of the ancient pyramids. Like that kind of reality that never happened before. So I'm starting to realize what Ramtha's doing. He's teaching me to open up to definitions of consciousness in the form of people, places, things, times, and events that I had nothing to do with. And as I open up to them and can describe them, I'm forming the quantum field of the experience of that very item or that very person to then be drawn to my reality, into my life. So then as I was developing more, that I could inquire more, like, why are you here? I mean, where did you come from? If you lived 35,000 years ago, where have you been? Are you a spirit? What are you? And they said, well, we are all spirits. You know, there's no such thing as a human being that isn't a spirit. I'm getting taught from 10 ways to Sunday and hardly getting past one sentence because everything has to be defined, ascribed, looked at, understood, experienced. But it was beautiful. The fallout is so beautiful, the fallout of learning something new. And we learn something new by desiring it and learning to focus out our judgment against the new and understand that we have no judgment because we've never experienced it. How can it be bad? How can it be good? Because we've never had the experience. It's without judgment. So learning to temper my own ignorance. We get puffy, you know. Oh no, it's not that. It's got to be this. It's got to be that. People get puffy. Oh well, and they don't know anything about the person they're talking about. Well, I can just tell you they're this way. If you study humanity, you start to see and can understand what you're looking at. But before I couldn't do that. So I had to do that myself to not just look like a blithering, ignorant spot of humanity in front of something I kind of still didn't know. As I opened up my mind and got over myself. And you get over yourself. Well, so-and-so said this, or somebody said that, or it's not in that book, but it kind of isn't. I mean, we are too stupid when we're pretending to be intelligent to know something really remarkable. The greatest way to know something remarkable is overcoming your prejudice. In other words, throwing your 2 cents into the pot. And the least that I did that, the more informed I became. And from that, then I learned Ramtha had an army. He was an alien. There were Atlassians, there were Lemurians, there were Ids, there were a whole lot of other ancient civilizations that were repairing the earth on a Genesis project for our terms of understanding. Every society had their part of working DNA, landscaping, healing the planet, creating life. Life is there. It's just how do you put the genes together? What design do you want them to be? So these are the matching genes. This is the reality of this. Big project, say the least, the world. And so he was a Lemurian. And his country, or where his people came from beyond the North Star, but Ramtha was born here. The Lemurians were the tall people. They were giants. It was like the bigger they were, the more humble and loving they were, because they already had the power. And so they were the sort of the psychic ones. They were the ones that could process thoughts and ideas through to a process of then, just like I did, describe something, learn about it while you're describing it, open up your mind, and it reveals itself. The information reveals itself. So now they're making beings, animals, insects, minerals, all sorts of creatures, land, sea, sky, to repopulate the world. Some beings that hid in the water, they permanently got to live in the water. That was their desire. They felt the safest there. Other beings, little beings, big beings, they got to populate what would one day be forests or jungles and around the world. His birth was here. His mother was a scientist. She was taller than him. Pretty impressive woman, 12 feet tall, gracious. The Lemurians were tall. The Atlassian people were smaller. The Atlassians were intellect, So they worship the gods of the intellect. I would later learn from Ramtha. No, they didn't have an idol that they said, whoa, this is intellect. What they did is that they lived only through intellect and without emotion. And what was grand about that is that they were in charge of inanimate building projects. Stone doesn't cry, doesn't have a nervous breakdown, doesn't get tired, sort of like them. It's not that that was a good thing or bad thing. It was a necessary thing. So they went to war. And the arrogance of the Atlanteans over the Lemurians were simply that they were soulless. They were less than the dog in the street. Meanwhile, the Atlanteans they're having a war and the continent sinks. The continent of Lemuria. You can still find it by the islands that you see out in the Pacific. Those mountain islands used to be mountain tops. And so the remaining of them took refuge across the swamps of Mexico to a coastal city called Onai. And there begins the great story of Ramtha, the Enlightened One. Took many years to get all the details. I didn't gain all of this knowledge in one sitting. There were things I didn't know about Ramtha up until 1989 that I still didn't understand. There are things that when we finally got the DNA report after we had been, everybody's experimental person, and you see his male DNA, when he's channeling through the body, changes my DNA. So I go from female body to male body, except I'm not an amorphodite. And up into that, you know that he's using your body. You know you have abnormally large neck. You know you have powerful muscles. You know that you are not feminine at all. And then you see that DNA report and you go, and I'm the one that requested them. It was a new learning that led me off into a whole concept in history, study history, and understanding that a male or female spirit can take a male or female body and affect it in DNA. They're demonstrating as that. That's the reason why males in a female body tend to look like males, but they're still women, and vice versa. I just did this whole study historically based upon that, on a new element of, Ram has taught us very well that what we think matters. So if Ramtha is 35,000 years old, was a warrior, he can send you a runner from here to the next incarnation. The fact that he is that, and that's the only description we have of him, it's profound on my body. I mean, he sends runners using my body. I can't send a runner. I can focus on people. He just does all these things in my body. What does our body have to be? Is immortality what we think? I think it is. Is youth what we think? I think it is. And genius, I think it's the simplest thing of all. It's not what we think.
What goes through your mind when you channel Ramtha? How does channeling him affect you? And how do you feel when you come back? Can you please elaborate?
This is a weighty question. And to an audience that still is not sure what I am, but to many who have already ascribed what I am. Not sure if it matters to them or not. But the truth is that when Ramtha took me out of my body, I was afraid. I was frightened because my kids are going to come home from school, and the first thing you think is that my children are going to come in the house and they're going to find me dead in the chair because I left my body. I mean, this is what you think. And Ramtha saw it and says, oh, be back before that. And I still couldn't trust him. Well, anyway, he just reached in and grabbed me, a ball of light, manifesting as a human being, and then pointed to what was the fireplace in the living room at that time. And it was this huge tunnel laying on its side. And then he just went like that. But instead, I got out and found cobwebs that I didn't know that I had missed. How dare me not clean up here on the ceiling? And then going through and thinking, I'm going through this wall, and what would I do? I am now in the study. I'm up on the ceiling. I mean, it sounds bizarre, but that was my first experience. And he kept his word. Then the next time the tunnel appears, and instead of checking on my cobwebs that I quickly cleaned up, noticing that where I had ratted my hair, I hadn't covered the rats. When I was coming back, I mean, you just look at this big rat's nest, you go, oh my God, what was that? Well, it turned out to be the back of my head. So I have been down this tunnel so many times in leaving my body. And I'm not even concerned, long ago I got over it, that I would ever return. I didn't think that I'm going to have children come home and find me dead in a chair and supper's not made. I think those days are long gone. I have learned that I wasn't my body and my ratted hair. Again, where do we put that? We put that into, first off, allowing that information to be as it is, that we're not our body. Just allow it to lay there. And then what is the next question? If the next question isn't a judgment, well, what are we? Well, what we are is a ball of light. Our body is like the machine, the viable, lovely machine that we work ourselves through in our brain. We are what makes the body electric. When we leave, the body dies. Body has to have light in order to subsist, and we are the bringers of that light because that's what we are. So as I began to leave my body and have all these adventures, I didn't remember them for a long time. It's like I had a delayed reaction. That was probably good because I think when we're frightened, we rather block the boogeyman than see the boogeyman. We don't want to see the boogeyman, meaning we don't want to know where we went because we're still afraid of where we went. See? So the same idea of defining the word in the beginning, Ramtha's taking me on these short jaunts back and forth, getting me to ask questions about when did I become this ball of light in this body? Well, then I get the lecture on that. And then I get to see when that happened. Amazing. So now I'm learning that if I self-correct, doubt, skepticism, a rush to put in silly interpretation, rather than just letting it lay and then describe what it is until the words start to come and then the visions start to come and then you can see the whole picture. I went to back in time, forward in time. Everything over the years has been sort of in class, in audience. Time, reincarnation. Reincarnation exists and everything's the now. And why can't I remember 200 years ago in my life? Those sorts of really logical questions that show me, not anyone else, show ourselves how unknowledgeable we are and what captives of time we must be. Because we cannot begin to imagine a now that exists without a memory and experience. But in fact, it is. We just don't know how to conjugate it. Then we realize we really are our bodies. Because, at 4:00, we have to go pick up the kids at school or we have to be somewhere. We have to always go, 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 go. It's about time. We're captives of time. And if that's the case, well, we have completely subsumed ourselves to our bodies. And we haven't really made these remarkable journeys that open up where eventually we're going to go and can go in this lifetime. Therefore, when I go, I always look out a window or a door when I leave my body. I want to see if it's light, if it's morning or afternoon or night. Because I've seen morning and then in an instant later it was dark. Because now I'm out of time, coming back into time. That was a trick, getting used to that and realizing that I don't have any memory because I'm gone. My ball of light is gone. Ramtha is using light on the back of my brain, which is interesting now because I only use 9% of my brain. What's going on, really? He's using it and he's keeping the body, he's working the body like a puppet. But Ramtha doesn't think it's his body. I mean, he doesn't even make an issue that it is or it isn't his body. You know, he just does his thing. We make an issue of everything. He doesn't make an issue of anything.
How remarkable. It must be absolutely fascinating to live a life beyond the restrictions of the body and venture with your mind into the unknown. You previously began to explain how Ramtha will ask you questions to expand your understanding. And then, as you stated, a vision would come, then the understanding. Can you share with us one of those visions?
Out of 42 years of channeling, ask me anything.
Let's say a new word comes and you don't know its meaning. You contemplate, and in a vision comes the understanding. Would you share with us one of these experiences?
How do we describe superconsciousness? By the word super added to consciousness. Well, what does that mean? It's a bigger consciousness. Well, what do we mean by bigger? It's wider, it's deeper, it's longer, it's what? It's dimensionalized, first off. But I didn't know that consciousness was a dimension. So we get into trouble, but we have to start with our words and essentially open up to understanding and then let new experiences come our way. And then we get to describe them or see them in a different way. There is no like open sesame that this is what I think is so beautiful. He says, you know, you're the lawgiver and what you say with so be it is the law. And he's right. He's absolutely right because as we say those things, we're in a focused state. So any of these words that represent whatever they mean to different people in imagery, memory, those reservoirs of opportunity, of knowledge, can come and exist. One of the cards I made for the field, and I was studying alchemy, because I understood it is at once an allegory, it's also at once transmutation. So it's a transmutation of the metal and the person doing it, the alchemist. So yes, reality changes when you do. Reality can't come unless it's invited. You can't change reality until you change, and then a whole different reality comes. So that's the story of the alchemist and coal into gold, or the red lion or the white lion. So I was working with that. Transmutation, heavy water, just wonderful experiments. I love it when my mind gets on. So I'd made this card on Count Saint Germain. I wanted his knowledge, and then him holding a beaker in which in the bottom is a bit of earth and a tree's growing in this beaker. He's actually created this, right? Sign of creation. My focus was in this card to use Saint Germain as the mind that I want to ask the question. In Saint Germain's mind, I'm going to be his mind. And so what I want to know is, how does water turn to gold? So I make this card, and this card is a huge pyramid. It's gold. It has a door that slides open on the bottom, and out of that's rushing white water. The sky is really deep blue behind it. So as Saint Germain, the pyramid represents the processes of transmutation of the metal process from substance to light to rare chemical dust of a very rare powder that we've really reversed base metal back through the elements, and we've arrived at gold. And I'm seeing this water of life as the red lion, what you drink to give you immortality, which I knew that Saint Germain had done. There's records historically of him doing this. So I wanted the water. I didn't want the gold. I wasn't interested in the gold. I was interested in the powder, the philosopher's stone. And that's where my engines fire up at. So I made this. And I was with J.O. at the time. And we were out in the field doing field work. Huge class that was there. I had blown and focused. And the stream was running out there. Finally, I just stopped. You know what I mean? There's like 2,000 folks in the field. Oh my God. So I just went, I am not getting anywhere with this. So I just stopped and I just looked through my frontal lobe at that card. It's Saint Germain. I'm looking at this card and I know what this means. All of a sudden, as I'm staring at the card, getting bumped and turned around and, whatever, my mind went off of those things, went off the noise, went off of the crowding. I just stared and something clicked in me. I just stared at it. It was behind my blindfolds. And suddenly the door slides open and this white water starts rushing out and it comes right up to where I'm at and it's going around me. And I look up at the top of this pyramid. This wind comes and it's whipping the apex of this pyramid. And I can see this gold dust in the wind that's whipping the top of the apex. And I got the water coming around me and I just know it. I know all of it. And then suddenly I keep hearing off in the distance, this is like an out-of-body experience. Hold it. Stop. I'm going, who's talking? Who's talking out there? And then I realized I'm in the field. What happened to me? And I look down and I'm standing in the middle of the stream, which I don't even know how I got there. I lift up my blindfolds. What the heck? I start walking back with a few friends and then J.O. comes and, we go upstairs and I just was telling him about how I did it. You have to really conquer who's hitting you, how many people. None of that is important. I mean, we're talking about the philosopher's stone, living immortality. So I'm sitting just telling him about this wind whipping this gold and I'm telling him that. And, I start to look at my hair and I start to see this light stuff in my hair. And I went, what the heck? The stuff started pouring down. I have really thick carpet. And I tell J.O., come look. So he starts parting my hair and he finds this gold stuff in my hair. And we had it analyzed and it's 24 karat gold. I had just learned not what the philosopher's stone in my mind was, not that loopy fantasy, but I had just learned the philosopher's stone on that field. And taking a card without words and letting it manifest, not my limited words. And then my words would come from the experience. See, I didn't need to say the words because I didn't know what the words should be. That these were the symbols of the alchemist. So just focus on them and let them do the hookup. And boy, did they ever. We'll have words, even if we're a great wordsmith. We have limited words that everybody kind of understands. And if they don't, they think they do. See, they use them anyway. They're just trash words. Consciousness is a trash word. Love is a trash word. Learning is without words. The way that Ram was teaching me through manifesting whatever he would make me describe, and I struggled to describe, even though I was common sense and rather poor at it, it would happen. So then that experience built on this experience, built on that experience. And what you have is that you have consciousness. You have higher state of consciousness now working through your brain because your reality has just broken the dam over here and it's seeing a bigger picture. So now it's not just this little corral that we live in anymore. We've broken out of it. That's what he's been endeavoring to teach since I've known him, to the students. Make this a common thought, for example, that fairies over the field should just be common thought. Not, oh my God, they can't be real, or oh, they must be photoshopped, or why can't they just be over the field? See how many great things we block because through our own judgment, we discredit so many great things. Through paring the remarkable down to what we see in a mirror is how much loss was like trying to find my card in the field and getting a little huffy with, people stepping on me and swirling me around and how just looking at the card as if you're looking at a scene right in front of you. That is the door to perception. That card is the gate that opens the corral that we're in. The way Ramtha introduced me to the remarkable, otherwise I wouldn't have had a neural net. I wouldn't have had language skills to even explain it. I had little baby steps that I could describe 5 steps of reality. How about the infinity that I've seen? How do you describe that? How do you describe reincarnation under the auspices that all things exist in the now? Where's the multiverse on a singular verse? As we ponder those concepts, those bigger picture concepts, reality comes in and gives you a way to experience it. Isn't that cool?
Yes. Wow, that was absolutely amazing. What inspired you to dedicate your life to deliver Ramtha's message, as well as to become a spiritual teacher yourself?
What inspired me? Well, I love God. Then I began to love Ramtha because as I began to understand his existence, transient of the caveman reality that was in my mind. And who could care less about Neanderthal and Homo erectus and, all of that. I fell in love with Ramtha. I realized it was why me for a while. And then Ramtha said, but why not you? You love God more intently than most people around you do. And I said, oh no, man, how do you know that? I'm asking him that. How do you know that? Well, shut my mouth. Anyway, once I could pick up memories of where I was going and what I was learning, even though sometimes it would take time for those memories or that recall of that experience to flow to my frontal lobe that I would remember. I mean, they're always there, but, I'm a young housewife, a young mother, and I'm a great cook. I'm a homeroom. I do the soccer, football, baseball, cars for 2 sons, and I'm cooking dinner every single night. So in that world plunks this reality. All the things I ever wanted to know, the love that I have in me, sometimes I feel like I'm going to just jump out of my skin. I didn't know there was no marriage license. It said, are you going to dedicate your life to this work, Raleigh? Aren't you? No, once I had my 2 years up with Ramtha and him training me, and then we had experiences with these other beings in the racetrack. and then Ramtha appearing in front of all those psychics, I finally became sort of a transient. Sometimes I'm in this world, a lot of times I'm out, channeling gone, because I'm out of this time. I don't have a memory of this time. You have to be in this time to have a memory. Well, I didn't, if you're out of time, the idea that I got to go and meet beings that I still, sometimes it's on the tip of my mind that I still know, but I feel them sometimes in my room. I've had a lot of beings around me come visit me. I mean, I'm never alone and I'm never bored with it. They come and check in on me. I'm kind of a homeless person and I'm a transient and I'm tripping through time. I'm tripping through dimensions as I learn more about dimensions. And then in this life here, I'm into history because there's some things that I now know that if I go back in time in historical events, for example, I already went through the Middle Ages. I've already gone through the Tudors. I've gone through Henry V. I've gone through all the Henrys. I've gone through everybody. Researched their times because they are the creators of statecraft. And how were women treated? What was thought of women? What did men have license to do to women? Where was the church? Why was the church so superimposed into people's life? What was it teaching? Was it benevolent? Or was it just another ruling class? And who was supporting it and the nobles, it's poor people, the market, in the coal mine, they're the ones that are paying for all of it. So I've been studying this and going, so how do we evolve out of that if I still see signs of that today in our culture? And I still see signs of, although I think the concept on religion is changing, basically because they're getting caught. I think the idea of royalty is sort of a sickening term. The other people that like to play paper dolls, my mother was a royalist and yet she picked cotton. I think that's sort of gone. We're not really into that because the downtrodden are rising up with their voice and they're rising up with their mind, squabbles everywhere. I think this is the true spiritual realization. Spiritual realization doesn't happen in India, doesn't happen in Bhutan, doesn't happen in the church. Spiritual realization is growing into the abundance of mind that we have at our disposal and making it known. The Ram said to me, I said, well, is that godlike? Should we be playing with matter? And he laughs at me. He says, what is not God? I went, well, and he'll say, well, then who made that? Then who made that? And he could ask that question to infinity until I run out of, well, where did it all come from? So when we say that our spiritual reckoning is simply made in a spiritual burning incense, holy dress, whatever, I've read about people who did that big league. That doesn't make you spiritual. What makes you spiritual is changing and evolving.
Beautiful. I want to ask specifically about, you said the only law in physics that is unchained is quantum physics, as it allows for original thought, whereas religion is a virus in the brain that does not permit individuality. Can you please share with us your understanding?
I think that most people's definition of reality and quantum physics is on equal par. They don't know anything about either one of them. They just know that their guilt and redemption is with religion, and everybody's guilty, and everybody needs redemption. On quantum physics, that's what nerds play with. It's not what you're into. It's not sexy. Quantum physics describes without passion and without emotion, without good or bad, exactly how observation feels of energy. make minute fields of reality. Isn't that what religion promises? The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Of course it is. But religion is a virus because in every incarnation I have studied has come up against it. Good people have been destroyed by it. The elimination of whole tribes of people have been sanctioned by the church. To give everything you own, to do pilgrimages, to pay homage, to see probably some old bones that are probably somebody's old sheep bones they were feasting upon, to say that's the finger of Joseph. Yes, those relics. What they are is that poor people have no other resource. Talking with God, and these crooks have lassoed that, have control over God. And if you happen to be an herbalist and you know how to fix up brews to have people relieved of their pain, relieved of their suffering, then you're a witch and they burn you for that. And especially if you're a woman, if you have the ability to soothe and to foretell things to another person, you have the sight. If you're a woman, you are burned at the stake. You're always burned at the stake. I know I've been burned at the stake before. How can then we reconcile the benevolence and hope of very poor people to God if their passage to God is only through a church that is such a cruel monster throughout the ages?
How is it that everyone has an equal standard to partake in the mind of God, as you have beautifully said it?
How is it that everyone has equality?
Yes.
Why would we not?
People don't know that, nor that they are equal in front of the mind of God, or that they have access themselves.
When people encounter pain and agony, and they pray and find solace or no solace, it's their first step to asking the question, are they worthy of being redeemed? It's just how we feel about ourselves is what pushes or pulls us, turns us on or turns us off. We are the conductor of our life. We have to go back and ask ourselves, under what rules and where do we find them, that we weigh the worth of each life? Doesn't exist. That we are all blessed with free will, that we all equally can make choices, that we all can summarize our own uniqueness, display our own loveliness and beauty, that we can create marvelous, lovely, fantastic realms of reality. I think because we could all see the night sky and we all see it together, tells us everything. The whole concept is that I think that's the leveler. And I don't think that some sort of coy words from me are going to help to define what equality is. I think nature does that perfectly well for us. We all get to see midnight.
Wow, wasn't that enlightening and out of this world? We hope to have inspired you. Join us for part 2 of our conversation with the one and only JC Knight as we discuss the mysteries of our DNA, and JC shares with us how a passion for the future is fundamental to achieving genius. Make sure to subscribe to our newsletter and don't miss our groundbreaking film, Evolution, the Genius Equation, at our website, WEGeniusMinds.com.